Morning, peeps. I'm back. Welcome back to post-season now, isn't it? So I'm not going to bother looking at leagues and that too much today. We're going to instead have a look at something that I found very surprising. Right, first off, I'm pretty happy with my score. It is what it is. Tiny green arrow ended up on 35k. Haven't even got it on the screen there, peeps, so it doesn't really matter. Live rank ended up on 35k. Now Martinez got sent off, but I still got a green arrow. So anytime that happens, you're going to be happy with a green arrow, aren't you, basically? And especially when there were quite a few chips in play. So even though it's a tiny green, I cannot be too unhappy about that. And I found out a very important thing about myself today because I thought I'd be very upset that Martinez got sent off, but I didn't care. I honestly did not care. And the main reason was because I really wanted Chelsea to get into Champions League. And that sending off was kind of pretty important, I think. That ruined Villa's chances and meant that Chelsea probably only needed a draw against Forest. But as it turned out, it didn't matter. But, Martinez has done well for me lately. So it is what it is, peeps. It is what it is. Bowen done all right, blah, 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 blah. We don't really care, do we? So, quick look at the Content Creator League, because some of you, we've been following this all season, haven't we? So we may as well wrap it up. Fabio was top with 70. We won't go into really any detail. Fabio was top with 70. Az was bottom with 36. Now, Az actually, it made me laugh. Honestly, this was funny. Not his score, but what it was like perfect symmetry for Az. I hope he doesn't mind, but he started the season by bringing in Barco. He supports Brighton. He started the season by bringing in Barco, who didn't turn up. And he's ended the season by bringing in Welbeck, who didn't turn up. And I don't know why, it just tickled me. It was like a fitting end to the season for Az, really, wasn't it? And we'll have a look at how everyone did overall. I think Bakar did best this week because he sold Rodgers and bought in Semenyo. Now, I don't know if that was a FPL review pick. I mean, obviously, I think Semenyo would have been very high up in the algorithm playing Ipswich. And Rodgers away at Man United, review probably wouldn't have liked very much. So it might have been a review pick. But either way, it turned out to be a masterstroke, didn't it? Absolute masterstroke. And if we look at the overall, Harry has got 6k. Then there's only 3 points between me and Fabio and Bakar. I'm one behind Bakar, annoyingly. And that is his Semenyo pick that's done that. And, but we can all be fairly happy. I think 35k-ish, not too bad. Mark's had a completely fantastic last 7 or 8 weeks. Captain Bowen, which was obviously a great differential captain, and has fought his way back to 76k after at one stage looking like 100k was going to be beyond his reach. So he's done really well. Andy's had a couple of pretty poor weeks. He was up at 30k a couple of weeks ago, back down to 77. Wag just missed top 100, 101k, still reasonable. Joe, a lot of bad luck lately, 112k, still not terrible. But then these two teams at the bottom, and I think we can put this down to pretty much Haaland earlier on in the season. There was that stage earlier on in the season where Haaland was looking awful. He missed a penalty in Europe. City were looking absolute garbage. Pep was literally beating himself up, and Salah was getting untold points every week. But these two were stubborn, kept hold of Haaland, and it basically ruined their seasons, didn't it? They didn't react well. They went on tilt, and basically, when you're in a hole, stop digging. Late riser in particular kept digging basically, and he's ended up about 500,000. So you know, I've seen teams that were 300k after game week 31, 32, and they've made it into the top 10k. So it was possible. You didn't need to go swinging for the fences at every opportunity. You know, um, that's the way late riser plays, though. It'll probably work for him next season, but this season it's been an absolute disaster for him. But that's where it stemmed from. And it's been a bit of a theme for the season, hasn't it? Backing players that have traditionally been our go-to players, but we've had lots of evidence that they're no longer that player, but we've kept hold of them. I'm thinking in particular of Haaland back then. Palmer, a lot of us are guilty of that. You know, we all kept Palmer too long, basically, didn't we? Despite the evidence that Maresca had changed his position and the fact that he'd blanked for like 10, 12 games in a row or whatever, and we failed to take note of it. Saka, he came back in game week 30. People immediately got him back. The evidence was there that he was no good or not back to his best, yet people kept him, bought him. I'll tell you what, peeps, if you like conspiracy theories, here's one for you. This week, at the start of a week, all the content creators were talking about bringing in Saka this week. I wasn't. I put that video out last week saying he was a trap. And he was a trap, and he turned out to be a trap. All these other content creators were saying they were oohing and ahhing, weren't they? They wouldn't commit to who they were going to captain or who they were going to buy because they were all looking at Saka. They were all going to get Saka in. None of them did. Saka didn't start. I was very surprised that but Andy didn't buy Saka, especially as he owned Palmer. You know, he'd been talking about Saka all week, but he kept Palmer and didn't get Saka. Now, I'm thinking, I've given him all the benefit of the doubt here and thinking it was because they did not get the confirmation that they were after that he was starting, rather than them having an inside leak. But the possibility's there. You know, I think it's slim. I don't think they had a leak that they kept to themselves. But I just find it odd that none of them actually did what they said they were going to do, which was bring in Saka. You know, I kind of wish Saka had started because I think he would have blanked and they wouldn't have all bought Bowen in, which is what happened. A lot of them went Bowen, De Bruyne to Bowen, rather than the Saka to Bowen that they were talking about doing earlier in the week. But I can understand why they didn't, because unless you absolutely knew 100% that he was starting, he was a risk, I think, Saka. He was a risk. Maybe they just all watched my video and realised just how much of a risk he was. We'll never know, peeps. We'll never know. But enough about them now. We're going to talk about the team of the season, because there is somebody in it that very surprised me. Really, really surprised me, this. And I did this video earlier and I lopped it off. You couldn't see it. It was very annoying. I did such a good video. And I've had to redo it, unfortunately. So if you just went to watch it, so I'm doing it again. Look, I'm lobbing things off, peeps. So how do I get it back? I just do that. So you can see it all now, so I can rest in peace. Literally soon, I suspect. Anyway, one player on this list really surprised me. Really surprised me, peeps. And that was Watkins. I mean, how on earth has Watkins got in the team of the season? Do you remember for a long time this season, he started the season poorly. He wasn't even getting picked by Emery, was he? He was having to share minutes with the other Villa striker. Now, in Europe, they weren't doing particularly well. And I don't really think that Watkins was ever really considered to be a serious pick, was he really? He might have even been one of these players that was under 5% ownership at some stages. I don't know. But, you know, he until the double game weeks, I mean, a lot of us bought him for the double game weeks. But even then, you know, I'm looking back at my last 8 weeks And I'm thinking, thank God I bought Bowen. I'm not thinking, thank God I bought Watkins. Do you know what I mean? But somehow Watkins is in the team of the season in the fact that he was the third highest scoring striker. I mean, if you asked me, if you said to me, you can bet £1,000 on who's going to be the third striker with the most points, I'd have said Visser. All day long, I'd have said Visser. But it turns out Watkins actually got more points than Visser did. Incredible. I would never have known, honestly. Never have known. Now we'll go to the keeper, which is another really interesting one, because what Pickford, I think this must be the first time ever, but Pickford has outscored all defenders, not just goalkeepers. He's beaten all the defenders. Incredible. You know, it's not unusual for a goalkeeper to get over 150. I can remember the Burnley keeper 3 or 4 seasons back getting 167, I think, or something like that. Heaton or whatever his name was, and getting over that score, you know, scoring more than Pickford. But for it to be more than all the defenders is absolutely crazy. You know, you've got, I wonder if I can make that bigger. I wonder if, oh, I won't do it. I'll probably stuff it up. But it's hard to see the numbers. Maybe I can. Let's watch me stuff it up, peeps. Oh, it hasn't made any difference. Oh, I stuffed it up. Right, where are we? Right, done. I knew this was going to happen. I'm a disaster. I'm a walking disaster. Right, so Guardiola, incredibly, the highest scoring defender has only got 151 points. That is ridiculous. Ridiculous. You know, Trent's normally on over 200, isn't he? And I'm sure the likes of Saliba and that are normally higher than this. Trent, pretty poor season by his standards. Never really got the season by the scruff of a neck, did he? Missed large parts of it. In second place with 148, and then it's Milenkovic. You know, so we saw the new bonus system at the start of the season, and we thought it was going to be the keepers that suffered. Turns out it looks like it's the defenders. Is that the reason why they haven't got many points, or is it just a lack of clean sheets generally? Right, Salah broke all the records for the midfielders, 341. Buemo's done very well, 233. But other than him, there's been quite low scoring as well, really. Most people have got all their points from Salah this season, and the rest of them have not been great. Palmer, 214. Pretty good overall total, but nearly 195 of those were before game week 30, I think. Since then, he's been terrible, you know, and his price next season has to take a big fall because in Maresca's setup, Palmer is not going to be the Palmer of old, you know. Obviously, they might sign a striker who turns out to be prolific, hopefully, and Palmer's assists will go up quite considerably, I suspect. But in terms of his goal scoring exploits, I can't see that really coming back. I can't see it coming back, not the way he's now being played. And with Maresca getting Champions League football for Chelsea, you know, who's to say he was wrong? Because moving Palmer might not have been great for Palmer, but in terms of the team, their defence has looked a lot better, you know. So I don't see him coming back to his former glory. 9 million maybe for Palmer next season. 9 million maybe. You know, it's going to be the likes of Wirtz and all these other players that we can hang our hats on. Bowen 190, incredibly consistent. I'll show you in a moment. Strikers, like I said, I cannot believe this is not in there. Shocked to see Watkins. Isaac's done okay, dropped off, but still got over 200. Chris Wood, exactly 200. You know, and I talk about late riser and ours being stubborn. I was stubborn where it came to Chris Wood. You know, Solanke was my big mistake this season. Not so much buying him, because Tottenham, I think, had great fixtures. They were an attacking team. Solanke had done really well at Bournemouth, but it just did not work out. Just did not work out. And I was slow to get Wood. In fact, I didn't get Wood. I didn't get Chris Wood until 2 weeks ago. It was the first time I owned him, and that was only for 1 week, and he got me 8 points. But I mean, he was tremendous for people earlier in the season. And I think what we can take from this list of strikers. No, we'll do it in a minute. We'll do it in a minute. We'll go there now, I think. We'll go and have a look. This is why I had to redo the video, because I went on here and nobody could see the points, which was very, obviously, would be very annoying for you all, wouldn't it? So we'll do it start by points. And I'll show you just how poor certain positions have been. Now let's check. Let's make it bigger again, shall we? Right, now it's proper big peeps, which means you won't be able to see it. So I'm going to move it along. Now why can't you see it? Oh, you can see it. Okay, so that's nice and big, isn't it? Nice and big for you. So you can see that. I've just got to check, because I don't want to do what I did before, where I had to redo the whole 45-minute video because that final column was lopped off. Right, so as we can see, strikers. Watkins just beat Visser by 1 point. Haaland did okay, but not for his price, obviously. Cunha did well, especially for those of us that timed his purchases pretty well. Apart from his sending offs, a lot of us got quite a few of those points at some stage, didn't we? Then you can see there's a massive drop off. The likes of Mateta, Raul, Strand Larsen, Delap, even Evan Nielsen. Look at that, only 128 points. Same points as Vardy in the end. Welbeck, 125. João Pedro, 126. Jackson, we won't even talk about him. Solanke, 108. He was my golden boy at the start. My differential. Nearly 100 points less than Wood almost. So, hang on, I'm checking again, peeps. Checking that my image. I'm moving myself. I'm going to move myself. Hang on. Why won't you move? Get over here. Get over there. Get over there, Trigger. Right, so... Right. Get my focus back. Right, so the point I'm making here, I think, is a point we often make. I think this season, first of all, has been very old school. A lot of the leagues I'm looking at in my top multiple 1K leagues, which is managers that have had more than one top 1K finish, a lot of old school managers that have had quite a few poor seasons lately have nailed it again this season for the first time in a while. And I think because this season is very old school. Once FPL Review came along, people started spending a lot of money on defenders, playing four at the back, and all these different types of structures. Whereas people like myself have always played 3-4-3 and put very little money in defence. And this season is a throwback season where defenders have done really poorly and putting money elsewhere has been the way to do it. Not spending transfers on defenders, spending transfers in attack or whatever. And I think this here shows that this third striker spot is where you use your transfers, because at various times, Evan Nielsen's been great. Delap's been great. Strand Larsen's been great. Jimenez has been great. Mateta's been great. But not for significant long spells. You have to capture these players when they're in the mood. And if you've done that, you've got points from them. But look at their overall scores. None of them have really done great, have they? I mean, I thought Evan Nielsen would have done better than that. But no, he hasn't, which is why Watkins has sailed into third place. Remarkable season for Chris Wood, really. Because he's just been, up until this season, He was just one of these guys, wasn't he? Down here, one of the 120 boys. And that's why I didn't get him, basically. I just thought he was one of those players on a bit of a short term tear up who was going to regress. And he just never did. Well, he did eventually, but not until after game week 30. So that's the strikers by overall. Now we'll look at the keepers first, because my own view is that 130 points is my benchmark. If I can get 130 points from a 4.5 or rotating 4.5s, I consider that to be a success. And if you look at this, Flecken and Sells were two 4.5s that did bust the 130 mark. Henderson's another one. He busted 130. And 130 is decent. You know, you can't all get Pickford. You can't in advance know which keeper's going to get 150 points. But should you just get a 130, 4.5 and stick with them? I don't think you should, because some of them did really poorly. For example, you could have got Kepa at the start of the season, only 106 points. For Bruggen, only 103. Ramsdale 97, Sarr 93. I don't know if Sarr played every game, but that's a pretty poor blooming total if he did. Pretty much did. He missed. Oh no, he missed. Sorry, Sarr. Sorry. You did miss about 8 games. Whereas I think Verbruggen would have played nearly all of his, and the same with Kepa. So I said at the start of the season that I thought 2 rotating 4.5s is the best, because you double your chance of getting a good one. And I think that holds true. You know, I think one of mine was Flecken. I can't remember who the other one was. Those of us that had Flecken will remember his 1-pointers at the start of the season. But he eventually did come right, didn't he? But it was very frustrating at that stage. But a lot of us said that his save points were the key, and probably in terms of save points, I don't know if you can order this by save points, but you could pretty much guarantee that Flecken would be top, or you can't. Okay, so that's the keepers. Now the defenders is absolutely shocking. Shocking. I could not believe it when I looked at this. Like I said, very, very low. Why can't I see the blooming? Even I can't see the. Can you see them? You can see them. I can't see them. So that's not ideal, is it? Oh, I can now. Right. So what am I doing? Points. Points. That's why I can't see it. What an idiot. I'm an idiot. Right. So not only has the top defender got an extremely low total, if you look at this, I mean, some of these, Saliba, 130 points. The top Arsenal defender, only 130. It's unheard of for an Arsenal. Unheard of. You know, the top Newcastle player, defender, way down, way down. 118. 118 points. The top Chelsea defender, 133. Not too bad, I guess, but I mean, most of that was late on, wasn't it? Muniz, the golden boy, done well, 142 points. But the way people talk about him, you'd think he was a 200-point merchant. But it just highlights how very, very poor the defender returns have been. Now, I don't know if it's lack of clean sheets, have been a lot less than normal, or it is these new bonus point changes. I've never seen anything like it, and it's why old school managers like myself have done pretty well this season, I think, because we just played 3 at the back, like the old days, 3 at the back, keep a pretty cheap defence, pretty cheap keepers, and job done, basically, isn't it? And use your transfers on your 3rd striker and your 4th midfielder, or your 5th midfielder if you're playing 3-4-3-5-2. So that's the defenders taken care of. Midfielders, again, not, Salah's like hoovered up all the points. 344, it's like 100 more than anybody else, which would normally be spread out. But, Bowen didn't make 200, but this is why Bowen's been so good for people. Look at this today. I'll tell you what, today was his highest score of the entire season. Can you see that? Can you see it? No. I will put it down a bit for you. But that was his highest score of the season today. 13 points. Crazy. He's had a 10, a 10, a 10, an 8, and 12, a 12. But, like people said, he hasn't had massive hauls, but he's still the fourth highest midfielder on this list. Fernandez, who at one stage I thought was going to get 200 points, didn't. He only got 174. Semenyo, despite his 16 today, only on 165. So strikers, we'll look at strikers. We've already kind of looked at them, I think. Haaland, hopeless. A lot of them. So what I'll do now, we'll have a look at instead of total points, we'll look at it by value for the season. Okay, this will be interesting. Who do you think is going to come top, peeps? I don't know. Who do you think is going to come top for value? I'll say Chris Wood. Strand Larsen, top for value this season. So he's top. Because he was quite good at for a little bit, wasn't he? Wood second. Jimenez third, who was also quite decent for a while and cheap as chips. Visser fourth. Van Cunha, Vardy, Delap, Pedro, Welbeck, Isaac, and Dye and Evan Nielsen. When I talk about my bad luck this season, I talk about things like bringing in Dye for game week 29 or whatever was happening. Something was happening with Dye. He was going to get a double or something, wasn't he? And I bought him in. He got injured, and the other Everton striker came in and got untold amounts of points. I think Dye got points in game week 37. It was just bad timing. Other rubbish that's happened, like getting Sarr instead of Eze and being on the wrong side of things there, and lots of little things. Solanke's injury at a vital time was another one, and Cunha getting sent off. All these sort of things happened to me. Happened to a lot of other people too, but every single one seemed to happen to me, to be quite honest. But even this week, most people haven't played Martinez, have they? Of course, it's my keeper. First time in his entire career gets sent off. He's one I own, the prick. Right, so where's Haaland in all this? Where is Haaland in ban for the buck? He's a long, long way down. He's down there with Archer. Down there with Archer, peeps. That's how bad he is. Down there with Højlund. Even Mamouche is down there. Although this only takes into account the whole season. It doesn't take into account that Mamouche has not played every single match. But you can see that strikers, not the best. Midfield's interesting, I think. Who's going to be top for midfield? Value for money. Rodgers? Maybe? I don't know. Let's have a look. Murphy. Murphy is top. Then Semenyo, Iwobi, Enzo, Buemo, Sade and Rodgers. At least these players have been performing, haven't they? Pretty much. Elanga, Sarr. Stay calm, Nick. Stay calm. Kluivert. Salah's, despite Salah getting 350 points, he's still not that high up, but he's a lot higher than all the other expensive midfielders. So all these players, these are what I said, these are the players that we want to be concentrating our transfers on it every week. You know, the fourth and fifth midfielders. Because if you nail these, they've all had significant periods of form, haven't they? In the case of Mbeumo, he's just been good the entire time. But this is where you use your transfers. So it's going to be very interesting next season whether this continues, whether defenders are still not worth investing in significantly in funds, and whether you use your transfers to get the cheap midfielders, just like this season. And people have done that have generally had a pretty good season, haven't they? People that have done poorly, I guess, are also the big hitters has also come into play, hasn't it? The Haaland versus Salah caused a lot of angst early in the season. You know, you saw what it did to Lake Riser and Az. So there was potential to get hurt there. But what started off as the season of being on the right big hitter quickly turned into being on the right midfield differentials, didn't it? And the right third striker. You know, so I mean, we look at defenders by value for money, and it's Milenkovic and Murillo. Collins, who D Unit has been very high on all season. D Unit ended up finishing the season in the top 5k. He's a content creator most people still probably haven't even heard of, but he's been on Let's Talk Have a Beer with me and Steve-O and FPL Nightmare. He's been high on Collins. Collins has done really well on this, you see, even better than Munoz in terms of bang for the buck. Van Bissaka done well, Kirkes, even Colwell. So that's about it, peeps, I think. I don't know what else we could order stuff by, but that's quite, gives a different kind of perspective, doesn't it, on how they've actually done. Let's have a look at the Dream Team. Now, the Dream Team is the number of times they've been best during the game, you know, in the game week, basically, for their position in terms of points. So we look at that, and you can see Cucurella 5 times has been the best defender to have. 8 Nori. You know, these are the ones that have got a big haul in various weeks. This is probably why Bowen is unlikely to be high on this, I suspect. Let's have a look and see if Bowen is high on this. He might have made it into the Dream Team still, I guess. No, see, he's a long way down. Look, Bowen has been consistent. Oh, he's still got 4. He's still made it 4 times into the Dream Team. But so have Gibbs White, Elanga, Murphy, De Bruyne, Slobberslai, Iwobi, Sarr, when he's on my bench, of course. Sade, Semenyo, Clivert, Rogers, Saka. They've all been on it. Palmer's been really well. Saka, 12 times in the Dream Team. Twice as many as any other player. You know, remarkable. Absolutely remarkable. If you didn't captain Salah at times this season, you were just suffered. Watkins, again, I'm so surprised. I am so surprised about Watkins in all these tables. I really, really am. Very surprising for me to see. Because to me, if it wasn't for double game weeks, I would never even considered owning Watkins, to be quite frank. You know, Haaland's been in it 5 times. Wood 5. But, you know, even Ndye's been in it 3 times, peeps. Doing all this has reminded me of little things like Ndye's injury, how awful Sarr's been for me recently compared with how he should have been. You know, I mean, he was on my bench today for a huge amount of points. And the other big thing, I guess, this season has been the chips, hasn't it? And the volatility in the chips. You know, some people use their assistant manager really, got 50, 60 points on it. I think I got 27. I got 29 for my triple captain at the same time as that. Other people got 2 for a triple captain. Bench boosts, I got 6. Since then, nearly every single week my bench boost has had my bench has had untold amounts of points on it, like this week. Yet the bench boost week, it was 6 points. So in terms of next season, what I would like to see, I think, is more changes, but in a good way. This season has been very, I'd give FPL 10 out of 10 this season. 10 out of 10. No, 9 out of 10. 9 out of 10. I dropped them a point because of the assistant manager chip and the fact they did not drop it on us until it was too late to take on board the consequences. And it being a 3-week chip, it needed proper planning, and they didn't give us the time to do that. But the new rule that they made about rolling transfers, absolutely fantastic. I'll give them 10 out of 10 for that. I'll give them 10 out of 10 for their pricing as well this season. Absolutely great. Absolutely great. Which is why a lot of old school managers, I think, have come back this season to the top of their form, because they've got the game they used to have. There's still this. I don't like chips still, simply because of the luck. You can get 2 points for your triple captain or 30 points for your triple captain. I don't like that. There's enough luck in the everyday playing of the game. Football's the bounce of the ball's enough luck. We don't need all these chips. Now, in terms of next season, 2 things I'd like to see. One, the near deadline go back another half an hour to rule out some of these leaks. Second thing, I really want this new rule that they're using in the World Club Champs. I mentioned it yesterday. You've probably heard me banging on about it. You're probably sick of it. But I'd love if they put this rule in FPL where if you buy a player that is under 5% ownership and he scores 4 points or more, you get an extra 2 points because you've picked the differential. Now, benefits are manifold. It's going to mean if they did that, that we'd be analysing players that we currently don't even bother looking at. The second tier players that are under 5% ownership on a regular basis, some of the defenders that play for reasonable teams. If they could get an extra 2 points every time they kept a clean sheet, it would really, really bring them into play. You'd see less of everybody having the same teams. Same with midfielders. You like I said in that video yesterday, the likes of Kudos, he got points today. He would have got an extra 2 points today for those people that bought him in, because he was under 5% ownership. It would help the casuals. Casuals are at a disadvantage normally because they're not glued to their screens. They don't tend to get all these deadline leaks, etc. They're less clued up on price changes and all of that sort of thing. They will naturally pick players like Kudos and players from their favourite clubs and that who are not optimal FPL picks but are under 5% owned. They'll get a small boost when one of those players gets points. It can only be a good thing, and it wouldn't be too hard to code, I suspect. Just make it so that if your player's under 5% ownership at deadline, you get 2 extra points should they score 4 more points. That's the rule I want to bring in. It's not a rule that adds luck to the game. It's a rule that adds an extra layer of skill and analysis. It gives content creators something else to talk about. You can make a weekly show about differentials that are owned under 5%, for example, and look at them and analyse them, and it would just generally bring a lot more players into focus. Someone like Pau Torres, regularly under 5%, never gets a look in because everyone goes for Conser. Second rate, other Crystal Palace defenders, other than Munoz, they just don't get a look in, do they? So a whole new player base of pickable players would open up if they brought that rule into FPL, and hopefully they have taken note of it. They obviously will see how other formats are doing, like the World Cup, see how it goes in the World Club Champs, and possibly bring in that rule. I'd love to see it. I don't hold out much hope. But anyway, peeps, enough about that. But overall, this season has been fantastic, in my opinion anyway. And I've loved every minute of it. I've loved giving you all this content that I've given you. And I genuinely mean that. I've seen big content creators go on Twitter this today telling their people how much they love them and all this sort of crap. And they've sent back replies and they just don't even get a reply. Me, I tell you, I really appreciate you and I mean it. And I do reply to you in the comments, because this channel wouldn't be here. It literally would not be here without you guys. And fantastic season. I've watched it when you guys do well in that, and I love it. You know what I mean? So the walking videos, I've really enjoyed doing those. Somebody watched my one the other day, and they said on Blue Sky that they were watching it, and they saw a van go by or whatever, van parked, and it had Bowen on the side, and they capped him Bowen on the strength of that, and he got them lots and lots of points this week, peeps. So, if you pick a differential captain, why not pick one that's got a van outside your house with a name on? It's as good a reason as any, and works out better than picking the likes of Watkins because they're playing a supposedly weak Man United team who then go and beat them 2-0. Who knows what would have happened if Martinez hadn't been sent off. But to be honest, from all accounts, Villa weren't looking too good anyway. And a lot of those games involving the top five were very, very nervy affairs, weren't they? And thank goodness Chelsea won. They showed a lot of fortitude, I thought, Chelsea, because they're still a very, very young side, much younger than the rest of the division. And they are going to have their ups and downs, but it was fantastic. But anyway, Pete's back to you lot, because you lot have been superb, and you've been there. And next season, I think we're going to have our own mini league for FPL. We're going to put a channel mini league in, and it's only going to be for people that actually comment on my videos. It's not going to be for all and sundry who might pop in for 10 seconds. I want it for the real people that actually comment on the videos, and we will highlight it during the season at various points as well, because this is for you, these videos really, and I honestly do mean that, peeps. So anyway, like and subscribe. As you're going to get a slap. You're not beyond getting a slap, even though you have been all very good this season. Seriously, you have. And I've loved every minute of it, peeps. Loved every minute of this season. And I'm sad it's over in a way, but at least we do have the Football World Club Champs to look forward to in about 3 weeks' time. And the time zones for it look pretty good because it's in the States and it should suit everybody, I think, pretty much everybody. And it remains to be seen how seriously the clubs are taking it. Man City and Chelsea are there, aren't they? Bayern Munich. We've got the teams from the Arab teams. I don't know which countries specifically they're from and all that, but it's going to be interesting. We've got Messi's there playing for Miami, I think it is, or whoever. So it's going to be a good festival of football. And by the time that's finished, we'll be back here talking about who we should bring in, why we should bring in the next Barco, and the next Chelsea striker, whoever that is, will be nailed into everybody's pet teams. And we'll all be told he's the best thing since sliced bread. You know what I mean? But if we learn anything from this season, it'd be to start the season with tried and trusted players who are 100% nailed. But the problem with that, of course, peeps, is going to be that the pricing is going to be so good again that we will not be able to afford them. We will not be able to go and get Guardiola, Saliba, Bowen, Mbuemo, Rodgers, Salah, Isaac, Visser, Watkins. You'll be lucky if you can get 6 of them, which is why this game is so fantastic, because every season's different, and every season we have to go back to the drawing board and start all over again and find these dodgy players to stick in our teams. Anyway, peeps, like and subscribe. Watch my content on the Fantasy World Cup. It's just going to be very magazine-like and half-hearted and fun, but I will probably put something out because I did start a mini league for it yesterday. So if you go on and look at my video I did yesterday, in the chat there is a link to my mini league. So go and make your teams. It looks a lot of fun and it has the best rules of any fantasy competition I've seen for a long time. So cheers for now then, peeps, and I'll talk to you all later. Anyway, have a good off season, everybody.